We're rolling.
Welcome to the House Dudes podcast, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Jack Haas.
And I'm Josh Koth. And here at House Dudes, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors. We're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
Well, as you probably noticed, we are no longer the REI Rookies.
That is correct. The House Dudes are officially born. We're about to tell you the story of how it came to be, so sit down and pull up a chair, sit next to the warm fire, and prepare for a good story.
So as you may or may not know, we have multiple brands going on at any given time, depending on what we're working on and what avenues we're trying to pursue. So whether you were looking for us, you could find us on Valley Property Partners, Fargo Flips, REI Rookies. We have meetups going on. What else? I mean, we have had projects and partnerships going on. And as such, it became a lot to manage.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where as we would start a new venture, we said, well, we should probably have a brand for this because maybe, our existing brand, whatever it was at the time, didn't quite fit that niche or work in that for that venture we were undertaking. So then we'd start another thing, like for retail flipping, we had Fargo Flips, and that was its whole separate thing. And then eventually it kind of became unwieldy. We have this REI Rookies brand for the podcast. Valley Property Partners was our main investing and wholesaling type brand. And it just became a lot to maintain, but none of those worked for everything that we did. And, tell you a funny story of how we came up with the name House Dudes, right? And this goes back to my band days. You may hear the name House Dudes and go, that's dumb, that's corny, that's whatever your opinion may be of it. And I just say Foo Fighters, right?
Yeah.
They're, biggest band in the world probably, and that name is ridiculous. And even if you ask Dave Grohl, he hates the name too. But once a name becomes the name, it's the name. Like even Led Zeppelin, which is a great name in my opinion, but if that band didn't exist and I came to you and said, I want to call the band Led Zeppelin, you'd say that's dumb. Definitely, I'm vetoing that. Get out of the band, you're fired. But, it's one of the biggest bands in the world, and nobody thinks about what a dumb name it is. They just think that's Led Zeppelin, they rule. So that's kind of how House Dudes was born. And honestly, it was the URL that was available, the best URL that was available that could work nationally, and we could get the .com for it. So that, unfortunately, in this day and age does factor in. So as we expand to other areas of the country and just undertake all kinds of different real estate ventures, we needed something that kind of worked as a company name to kind of umbrella over all those different ventures, whether it's wholetailing, retail stuff, flipping, the podcast, meetups, everything that we're doing. So it needed to be not regionally specific. So as a consequence of that, that's kind of how we came up with the new name, the new URL, housedudes.com. So you may notice we'll be changing over our social media, websites, things like that in the next few days and weeks here as we get all that stuff updated. But I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk about not necessarily the reasons why we're doing it, but just when you do rebrand, it makes you consider a lot of different things that you're doing. And, as a time to revisit some of these, because some of these names have been in place for 2-3 years now. What marketing items do you have out there, websites, social media, all that kind of stuff, and how can you refine that and make it better? Kind of now's your chance to improve it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that I think is going to be improved is just some of our phone calls we've had, because I cannot tell you how many times I had to explain our email address. Valley Property Partners, there's a lot of typos when you have Jack at Valley Property Partners. So we tried to simplify it at one point.
A lot of letters, yeah.
So we tried to simplify it to simply vpp.email.
But then people don't get the .email extension.
No, so I would spend seriously a minute on each phone call explaining, no, they just have to do vpp.email.
Yeah, and a lot of times certain web forms won't accept that as a valid extension either.
Right.
They only want .com.
So my point is just the simplification of it.
Right.
Valley Property Partners not only was a great brand for this area, but it was difficult for us to just use as communication.
Right. Yep. It's a longer URL, longer email address, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it works for getting rid of that. Plus, that's Valley Property Partners is for the Red River Valley. For those of you that are listening from outside the upper Midwest, we're from Fargo, North Dakota, and that's called the Red River Valley area. So everyone around here, there's a lot of companies called Valley this, Valley that, Valley Plumbing, Valley Rentals, Valley whatever. So it works for this area, but not nationally. So that's, another concern that we had. We wanted something that was applicable nationwide as well as the podcast reaches further and further out. And we start working into other markets real estate-wise too. We just needed to have a name that works nationwide.
Yeah, and that's part of the confusion. That was good that you brought that up because there are a lot of Valley and then whatever real estate company.
Yeah, like there's a company called Valley Rentals. So they confuse that with us.
And there's Valley Properties.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, so there's just some confusion in the marketplace that also helped us decide to make the change.
Right.
But like you said, with that, it does make you take a minute to go like, okay, if we make this type of change and we consolidate it to like one website and one effort, what is the ripple effect? So not only are you changing your website and the podcast name, because we were managing multiple websites, frankly, for the podcast and then for our regular endeavors. And then at one point we even had websites for buyers and sellers. And I think we had almost 4 or 5, even 6 websites at one point. Mm-hmm. But then you got to also change all of the Facebook and social media and everything else because
Instagram, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those different social media platforms. If you have all those platforms for every brand, that's exponentially that much more to maintain. And really the negative side effect of that was that these different brands weren't supporting each other. And, sometimes people would come up to me at a meetup and they would say, they ask me a question. I'd say, well, just listen to our podcast. And they'd say, you have a podcast? And I'd say, yeah, it's called the REI Rookies podcast. And they would say, oh, I thought you guys were Valley Property. There was confusion. They didn't understand that it was us. So when you rebrand and everything's under one name, okay, it's House Dudes Podcast, House Dudes Flipping, House Dudes Rentals, House Dudes Wholesaling, it's House Dudes Meetup, it's all one thing and it feeds each other and you can get some overlap in referrals and things like that and extra juice out of your marketing because it all kind of self-supports and feeds into each other. It also gave us an opportunity to kind of consolidate some brand awareness and be consistent in that. So we're really thinking about color, font, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to spend too much time on that because that's not getting you deals as a real estate investor, but you do have to put some thought into that. And if you're going to rebrand, you have to, take a moment to really think about, okay, what can we use what we've learned from marketing people over the years to try to maximize this? The brand awareness is crucial, as you're working into different markets and doing different things. You want people to go, oh yeah, I've seen you guys around, or I've seen that sign, or that I recognize that your color shirts or whatever. You just raise your awareness as a brand in whatever markets you're operating in.
Yeah, so you're probably going to see not only the change in the podcast name and the website, but that's probably the big push is to maintain that brand and that brand awareness across everything we do and everything we hand out, even what we wear. We're probably going to be a little bit more consistent on that.
And that's something you have to consider as a real estate investor, whatever you're pursuing. If you're trying to get discounted properties and you're talking to sellers, well, if a seller has seen your name around and recognizes you as a reputable company, it really helps build some of that rapport and trust before you're even in the door. So that helps. People want to be able to look you up, see that you're reputable, and any type of awareness and familiarity they have before you're at their kitchen table, talking about buying their house helps. And you need to get to that point, obviously, when you're dealing with hundreds of leads and cold calling and all this other stuff. The quicker you can build trust and rapport, the better. So anything that gives you an advantage or pushes you in that direction, you want to be able to do.
So let's go through a list of the few things that other things that we have definitely identified that we have to make changes to now that we are the house dudes. One of them was the bandit signs are going to be changing. We see our actually market, we're seeing more and more bandit signs on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And thankful because of the warmer weather finally here in Fargo. That's probably one of the causes of it. But notice that they all look alike. So that gives us an opportunity to take a step back on that. And then we have stickers in our back windows today, but we're going to be changing that as well to more of a car wrap instead of just the back window decal.
Yeah, it's funny because we've had a car, mesh. It's got like a mesh cloth sticker kind of thing. I forget what you call it exactly, but it's kind of a mesh that goes in your back window that it's full color. It's really nice looking. But I found that having that on my car for a little over a year now, God, has it been even more than that maybe, but as I noted, once you have it, you notice it, what they call it, reticular activation or something like that.
Yeah.
Once you have something, you see it everywhere. So now I pay attention to other wraps and how people have marketing on their vehicles, and I've seen ones that I feel are way more effective than what we have. So they're going to see that as a chance. Hey, if we're rebranding, now's the time to upgrade that and take advantage of some of the techniques we've learned and create a little more high contrast and visibility.
Yeah, and one other thing that I'll just give a quick tip is when you put that thing in the back window and it rains, you forget about looking through your back window.
Yeah, it kind of destroys your visibility. So we're just going to do some high contrast, white lettering on a solid color, like on the sides of the cars. We found that to be way more effective, at least I have, when you're going down the street and actually raising that brand awareness.
So, and one of the things that I think you're going to see is that we've been saying this from the very beginning, persistent, consistent behavior. We're now making sure that we're persistent and consistent in our branding and the way we communicate.
Right, and hopefully that we're making it able for all the different efforts to support each other and raise awareness of each other. So every time we release a podcast episode, that possibly brings in people who are interested in potentially selling their house or buying a house from us. And it's all the same brand. So it all will hopefully raise awareness for all the other things that we do.
And I think one of the benefits we're also going to see is that since we're eventually not going to be managing so many brands, so many websites, so much material, we'll be able to reduce that workflow considerably, condense it quite a bit so that we're not spending so much time on it.
Yeah, opportunity cost. So every time you don't have to update a different Twitter feed or something, it's more time that you could have spent talking to a seller or making offers, which, as we know, are the money-generating activities in real estate investing. So it's funny because we kind of argued about, like, we're redoing our logo and we're having arguments about it. I'm just basically saying, good enough, let's just roll. And, you kind of want it to be a certain level of quality, and you always have to balance that, the amount of time you want to spend on a certain activity if it's not a money generating activity. So that's always the constant battle. How much time are you going to spend on this item, but versus just calling it good enough and moving on. Progress, not perfection, right? But if you're going to rebrand only once every few years, you do have to tread carefully, as you go. But again, I'll say Foo Fighters, right? If I brought that to you as a name, you'd say it was ridiculous, but here they are, hugest band in the world. So once the brand hits the streets, it kind of sinks in and it just becomes the brand.
So I hope it sinks in because this is what we're going to stick to here for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else to add?
I think that about covers it. So look for all our brands and social media, websites, everything to update over the next few weeks and months, and we'll see you out there. We've put a lot of effort into providing useful content, and if you found value in the show and have any interest in supporting us with a small donation, head over to patreon.com/housedudes.
If you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@housedudes.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at housedudes.
And if you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other rookie investors out there find the show.
And remember, get off the bench
and get into the game. We'll see you next time. This episode was brought to you by housedudes.com. Do you live in a good cash flowing market? If so, Turnkey probably isn't the best choice for you. You should buy in your market. If you don't live in a great market for cash flow or investors, where can you find profitable properties? We love the Midwest, where prices are reasonable and the people are great. We personally invest here and have lived in the area all of our lives. So how does Turnkey work? We find the property, we rehab the property, we find you a tenant and place you under the care of our local property manager, who we trust with all our own investment properties. I'm sure you have questions about how the process works and what to do next. If that's the case, fill out the contact form on housedudes.com and we'll reach out to see if you are a good fit for our business. We have a limited supply of properties every month, so we can only sell to a select few qualified buyers. See you on housedudes.com.
I don't like to tell a man what to do with his money, but if you ain't investing in property, then you're dumber than a dummy.
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
Well, buy property. That's my advice.